We're about to tackle one of the biggest questions there is. Where do we come from? Now, you think you know the story of Adam and Eve, right? But what if I told you that's not even close to the whole story? What if the real answer has been hiding in plain sight this whole time, just locked away in the language of our oldest myths? Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to follow a fascinating trail through 4 key areas. We'll kick things off with Adam and Eve, then dig up the story of a forgotten woman. From there, we'll look at how heaven and hell might actually be real places on Earth. And all of this leads to a mind-bending final question: were we created by a god, or was it something else? So first up, Adam and Eve. I mean, we all know that story, right? It's foundational. But what if it's not the original? What if it's actually a copy, and the original blueprint is thousands of years older? You know that famous line from Genesis, right? The Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground. It's everywhere. But here's the thing. This idea of being made from earth, from soil or clay, it's not unique, not by a long shot. In fact, what if that story itself is a copy of something much, much older that somehow spread all over the world? And that's the real head-scratcher, isn't it? How on earth did all these ancient cultures, separated by huge oceans and thousands of years, people who should have had zero contact with each other, how did they all come up with the exact same basic idea for where we came from? I mean, just look at this. It's wild. You've got China, the Mayans, ancient Greece, Egypt, the Dogon people in Africa, all telling a story about humans being made from clay or mud. It's the same fundamental concept, over and over again. This can't be a coincidence, right? It strongly suggests that this story has a single common source way back in time. So, where did this story come from? Well, all signs point back to one of the oldest civilizations we know of, the Sumerians. And here's where it gets really interesting. Some researchers believe that when the Sumerians talked about clay, they weren't just talking about dirt. They were using it as a metaphor, a symbol for the basic earthly essence of life on this planet. You know, the physical blueprint, what we'd call DNA. Suddenly, this isn't just a myth. It sounds almost scientific. Okay, let's stick with the Adam and Eve story for a second. There's another huge detail we all know: Eve being created from Adam's rib. This one single detail has had a massive impact on culture for centuries. It's such an iconic image. But what if it's all just a big misunderstanding? A really clever ancient pun that got completely lost in translation? Check this out. This table really lays it all bare. Thousands of years before the Bible, you have this Sumerian myth. The god Enki has a pain in his rib. So a goddess named Ninti is created specifically to heal that rib. And the name Ninti literally means lady of the rib. Now, look at the biblical story. The parallels are just undeniable. Okay, so here's the key that unlocks the whole thing. It all comes down to a bit of ancient Sumerian wordplay. The word ti had a double meaning. It meant rib, but it also meant life. So Ninti wasn't just the lady of the rib, she was also the lady of life. When the story was later retold in Hebrew, it seems they kept one half of that pun. They created a woman from a rib and they named her Eve, or Hava, which means life giver. A story about healing a rib morphed into a story about creating life itself. Pretty clever, right? All right, so if the Eve story we know is basically a retelling based on a Sumerian pun, that opens up a huge question. Who was Adam's partner before that story was written? Well, turns out there was someone else, a powerful, independent woman whose story was intentionally buried. Her name was Lilith. And in some ancient Jewish texts, her story is totally different from Eve's. See, she wasn't made from Adam. She was made from the same earth at the same time. She was his equal in every way. And when Adam demanded she be subservient to him, she refused. She chose her independence, spoke a secret name of God, and literally flew out of the Garden of Eden. She picked freedom over a controlled paradise. And what happened to her story is a classic case of character assassination. Over the centuries, you can literally watch her being transformed. She starts as a Sumerian night spirit, then becomes the symbol of female power and independence. But later on, she gets turned into a terrifying demon who steals babies in the night. What a perfect way to scare anyone, especially women, from challenging authority, right? Now, this pattern of rewriting and reinterpreting stories, it doesn't just happen to people like Lilith. It happens to places too. Think about our concepts of heaven and hell. We imagine them as these supernatural, otherworldly places. But what if they're not? What if they're actually based on collective memories of very real places, right here on Earth? Okay, let's start with heaven, or, the Garden of Eden. Picture it. A beautiful, lush garden, a perfect paradise with 4 great rivers flowing out of it. We all know that image. Well, here's the incredible part. Modern science actually confirms this. Geologists and climatologists have found that about 400,000 years ago, right around when we, Homo sapiens, were showing up, the Persian Gulf region wasn't a desert. It was a green, fertile oasis. And get this, it was fed by 4 major rivers, including the Tigris and Euphrates. It's a perfect match for the description in Genesis. It was a real place. Okay, so that's heaven. Now let's flip the coin and look at hell. The fiery pit, eternal suffering, all that terrifying stuff. Well, the original Hebrew word for hell is Gehenna, and Gehenna isn't some mystical, made-up name. It's a real place. It's a valley right outside the ancient walls of Jerusalem. And back in the day, it had a horrifying reputation. It was a place where certain pagan cults practiced child sacrifice by fire. The acts committed there were so awful, so evil, that the name of the valley itself became the very word for hell. A real place became the blueprint for eternal damnation. Okay, let's pause and connect the dots. Our story of the first humans seems to come from an older source. Our ideas of heaven and hell are based on real places on Earth. So, if all that is true, what does it mean for the story of our creation? This is where things get really wild, because this is where ancient myth bumps right up against a huge modern scientific mystery. If you look at the fossil record, you see millions of years of our ancestors evolving really slowly, bit by bit. And then, all of a sudden, around 400,000 years ago, boom, something insane happens. There is a massive, unexplained leap in brain size and complexity. This is the moment that Homo sapiens, us, appear on the scene. And to this day, scientists can't fully explain why this sudden explosion of intelligence happened. Just to give you a sense of how dramatic this was, our brain capacity literally doubled compared to our predecessors. After millions of years of tiny little steps, we took a giant leap in what is, evolutionarily speaking, the blink of an eye. It's a massive anomaly, a huge puzzle that still stumps scientists. And this brings us full circle, right back to the Sumerians, because their creation story is, well, it's mind-blowing when you put it next to this scientific mystery. They didn't describe creation as a magical act. They wrote about it like a biological procedure. They tell of beings they called the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, who took their own divine essence and mixed it with the clay of the earth, the essence of the primitive hominids already here. And from that mix, they engineered a new species, us, the Adamu, a species of workers. Is it possible that this ancient myth is actually describing the event that caused that unexplained leap in our evolution? So that's what we're left with, this really provocative question. Are all these creation myths just stories? Or could they be something more? A kind of fragmented, distorted memory of our own history. A history where we weren't just created, but genetically engineered. Maybe the answer to the biggest question, where do we come from, has been sitting in these ancient texts the whole time, just waiting for us to finally understand the language they were written in.